Welcome to Diabreadic, Highs and Lows, Life Alongside Diabetes, a limited series where I sit down with a member of my family and talk about our shared experiences with chronic illness. Today, I'm sitting down with my brother Marcus, and we'll be discussing our shared experiences together, and I'm excited to share that with you.
And for our bread today, we're taking it back to basics. We have a basic sandwich bread loaf.
Delicious.
All right. So our bread today. This is actually like kind of exciting a little bit to talk about this one because it's really basic. You know, we've done a lot of different breads so far. Mm-hmm. Some of them have been a little bit complicated. You know, some little thing about them that's a little different, a little unique, a little out there, perhaps. But this is a basic sandwich bread loaf.
Yeah, and it's amazing the difference. I mean, when you just eat store-bought bread a lot,
yeah,
it's interesting to then eat this kind of bread.
For sure.
I mean, it's huge. It's a huge difference, and we don't make it enough.
Yeah, and the truth is that every time I make it, I say something along the lines of, I never want to buy a loaf of bread again because this is so good and so easy and yada, yada, yada. And then
life.
And so we just do anyway because of course we do. Of course we're going to go buy loaves of bread.
We're human too.
Of course. But, I mean, it's a whole other experience for sure. It is not in the same ballpark as the supermarket kind of loaves of sandwich bread. In this case, we made this is strictly white bread. I mean, it was 100% bread flour. And so it is regular white flour, but with extra protein, a little more than all-purpose flour has. This is a recipe you can make with all-purpose flour, and we have done that a number of times.
Both ways are very good.
Yeah.
It does. If you were to taste them side by side, you would be able to tell the difference, I think. But, I mean, sixes, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the texture changes. Necessarily so. Because you will build more gluten with the bread flour. And this is where we get into a little bit of a bread tip because you can alter this recipe. It's super basic. And so it can be altered really easily. And you can include different types of flours, portions of the flour, throw in some whole wheat, throw in a little bit of rye, throw in some spelt if you're have that kind of thing lying around, because who has spelt lying around besides bakers? But
and you get into that a little bit on the blog.
Yes. And this is a fun thing about this recipe too, is that we actually have a recipe up on the blog.
Yeah.
So head over to diabreadic.com/blog and you can find this recipe. And I note there, and I hope that people appreciate this as much as I do when I see this. I really don't like when food blogs have recipes that you have to scroll through a dissertation worth of description of some
life
experience.
Stories.
Don't get me wrong. A lot of that is interesting stuff. I do humanities work. I'm all about stories and the human experience. But if I'm looking for your recipe, you already got my click. You know, I'm already there. I'm giving you traffic. So just give me the recipe. Anyway. You won't have to scroll through for ours. But one of the things...
And then there's me. I start reading the story and then I'm like, ugh, what am I doing? I get sucked in. I get sucked in every time to people's lives.
But yeah.
But I do get annoyed as well.
It's a great thing.
Okay. Well,
but when it comes down to it, just give me that recipe, you know? I'll scroll down. I'll read your story. Don't get me wrong, but I'm here to bake.
No. I'll read your story while my bread rises.
Yes. So one bread tip here, since we're talking about changing out flours, switching things up a little bit, if you are going to use all-purpose flour, you've got to pull back on some of that water. Bread flour does take more water in. It will absorb more. It will hold on to more. And so you can actually need 70% hydration in a loaf made with bread flour fairly easily. If it's all purpose, it might get a little sticky. It might be a little tough to work with. So you might need to pull that back a little bit. There are a couple of things that we could like expand on here. We didn't do things like brush the top with butter.
Yeah.
Super common, tastes delicious. It's way good, but like we didn't because it's a basic loaf and it's delicious anyway.
And we also ran out of butter.
Oh, yeah.
That never happens in our house, but
It doesn't.
Stocking tons of butter lately with baking, but we ran out of butter. What,
if you can believe it.
Lives are we living?
How wild is that? No butter. Ugh. Time to go shopping. Anyway, it is delicious. Toast it up, butter it, use it with some soup, slice it up for sandwiches.
Toasted is my favorite. It's so, what is it about bread that gets toasted? There's something about toasting bread that just speaks to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I grew up eating cinnamon sugar toast, so it was like a treat for
Cinnamon
us.
sugar toast. So good. It's funny that you bring that up because it reminds me of an episode of Modernist Breadcrumbs. Now, Modernist Breadcrumbs is a podcast series. I think it aired on radio as well, but so you can go and check it out. It's made by the Modernist Kitchen folks, and there's a whole like mini series on histories, practices, culinary arts, all kinds of random crap related to bread, and I freaking love it. It's so good. But there's one bit in there.
I'm laughing because I've never heard you talk about this, but it is classic.
I mean,
Steve.
Okay. I remember, this was pre-pandemic. I remember being at the gym and running on a treadmill with Modernist Breadcrumbs in my
toast.
ear. Seriously. But there's a bit there where they're talking about how, whoever it was that ate bread and was like, listen, I know that we just like baked this bread here, but like, what if we just like baked it again? What if we just cooked it again? But it's like
brilliant.
It absolutely, it's a game changer.
Go toast some bread.
Yeah.
Whatever bread you have, go toast it.
Yeah. And then bake some of this one and then toast it again.
All right. Today on Diabreadic Highs and Lows, my guest is Marcus, my second youngest brother. It's all very confusing. I'm doing this out of order. So welcome, Marcus.
Hi. Happy to be here.
Thanks for being here. So let's just get to it, I guess. I'll start out. What do you remember about when I was diagnosed initially? You were, I guess, how old were you?
So
7?
I would have been 7, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was the summer when we were in San Francisco.
Well, no, because we
Right?
went to San Francisco in December. I think probably Christmas break because I was,
Oh,
or
was it
January
Christmas?
maybe.
Yeah.
Time is relative when you're a kid because, like, what is time? But
Oh, of
I was
course, yeah.
diagnosed in February, so we must have gone in January to San
Oh.
Francisco.
Okay. So
But it's warm there, so it felt like summer.
no, so in my mind it was summer because it was warm. How my memory works is I have like a
Seasonal.
picture. I have a picture in my mind of like what's happening, right?
Uh-huh,
Like that's
sure.
sort of just how it works for me for whatever reason. And so I have this very distinct memory of us walking down a street, like a really packed street. It was like maybe like a mall-ish kind of area.
Mhm.
And we're like walking down the center or whatever in San Francisco, and mom and dad having to find a bathroom for you
Yep.
because we were just like constantly stopping, and them being a bit weird about it.
Yeah.
And then and
Christopher kind of said the same thing, that they were kind of being, because they were probably all stressed about like what was happening, and every time I was like, I have to go to the bathroom like 5 minutes after I already went to the bathroom.
yeah, and like of course like vacations are crazy stressful in the first place, and
Right.
so
With 5
then-
kids.
Yeah, and so then there's just this other thing that I'm sure keeps popping up that then they're like, oh, well, how long has this been happening? Like it brings to the attention, right?
Sure.
I remember hearing like didn't I remember hearing something about how diabetes is often noticed for the first time on vacations because
Oh,
it's like a
that's
very
interesting.
different because it like takes you out of your normal
Day to day.
day to day. I have no idea if that's true. I
That's
feel like
really
I
cool,
remember
though.
hearing
I mean,
that when you were a kid and we were first learning about it. But
I mean, that does kind of make sense. Like putting your body in a, different kind of stressful situation, and
yeah, it
that's
just like it takes
interesting.
you out of your routine. So if you're
Mhm.
going to the bathroom every hour at home, like mom
No
and dad
one
may not always
might not.
know, right?
Of course,
Like,
mom noticed. She had taken me to the doctor before we went on this trip,
oh
and
really?
everything
I
was
didn't know that.
fine. Yeah, I need to, when we interview her, kind of go over the specifics of that. But
Hmm.
mom had clearly, she's observant. And so she had
Yeah.
clearly noticed stuff going on with me,
Mhm.
losing weight and obviously going to the bathroom all the time.
Yeah.
um,
But yeah, so I remember that aspect. That's like the first thing I remember is that moment, and then connecting that to you being in the hospital because we came home and pretty quickly after we got
mhm.
back, you were up at the hospital, and I remember, like as a kid, I don't know if other people are like this, but I would stress about everything.
Yeah.
Like if mom and dad left, and it like was 9 o'clock and I was still awake, I'd be like, oh no, they were in a car crash or something. Like I would be terrified like all the time for anything like that. And so then you were in the hospital and I was really worried. Like I just because I didn't know what was happening and
Mhm.
like I remember dad came back one night I think it was dad and had said like "Hey, Melissa's okay, like they figured some things out. We're going to have you come up and sort of explained a little bit of it to us, and so then that definitely helped. But I was definitely worried, and then I do remember going up to the hospital and meeting you there, um, and like the nurse explaining some things.
Mhm.
But that's mostly what I remember of the actual like diagnosis
Hospital time.
in the hospital time because I do remember going in and I the funny thing is I didn't remember the orange story until I listened to your podcast with Christopher, your episode with
Oh,
him.
that's so funny. You were
And
little, so I mean, I don't even know.
yeah,
Were you there for that?
I was there. Yeah, I once you told it, like I
It, like came back
very
to
much remembered like vividly that like it like a picture that scene of the nurse with the orange and everything. So like it then came back to me, but
That's
I
so funny.
and then yeah, I remember a little bit of that time at the hospital, but not a ton.
Yeah, they had an arcade with this old Pac-Man machine that you could play together. Like
Yeah.
two people could play it together, and it was the greatest. Like Dad loves Pac-Man, and so of course he was all over that, and he would come and we'd go play Pac-Man. And so I think when you guys came, we would of course go to the like place where there's games, and we played that. And you
Mhm.
guys brought me Guess Who.
Oh, I remember playing Guess Who.
Yeah, so we played
Yeah.
Guess Who in my hospital bed. I remember doing that.
Oh,
And I
that
think
was so fun.
I
Yeah.
think you guys brought me a teddy bear or something, like some stuffed animals, and of course, like
Hmm.
trying to comfort me in this
So
like crazy time. But
yeah, how long were you in the hospital? Because I don't remember really much of that at
I
all. Because
think it was 3 days. It
okay.
might have been 4, but it was something like 3 or 4 days, which I don't think is as common now to have long hospital stays. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
But I've heard of people being diagnosed and just going home. I don't know if it's like something to do with
Yeah.
children or like,
I'm yeah, and like I at the time, like how do you know how serious? Like, were there other complications going on? Like, did I? Because
I don't
was it just
think
mainly
so. I
teaching
mean,
you like how to take care of it, or
yeah, and I think I was probably really dehydrated. Um, I remember the nurse telling me, she gave me this jazz cup. This was like in the height of the jazz, like
oh
Stockton
yeah,
Malone, Brian Russell time. And we were
yeah,
all obsessed, of course, with the
oh
jazz. And
yeah,
so she gave me this jazz hospital cup. and told me like, okay, because I was terrified of needles. Like I still remember like screaming when they were giving me, like trying to give me the first shot, and she was like, I promise you're not going to feel it. And then when she gave it to me and I didn't feel it, it was like, oh, like, wow,
okay.
I was freaking out over nothing. But they wanted to do an IV because I was really dehydrated, of course, with the high blood sugar that had been going on for quite a while. But I remember her saying, you know, if you drink enough of this water from this jazz cup, then you won't have to get an IV. And so then it was just like chugging. So, I mean, I know there was dehydration. I'm going to have to ask mom and dad if they remember any of the details, because obviously as a kid, you're not getting the actual talk of like, okay, this is what's going on. This is why we're here for this long, you know? So that is an interesting question.
Yeah. But, so I remember a little bit there, like a little bit of the hospital time. And then I do remember a fair amount about like how the like food at home changed, right?
Yeah, what do you remember kind of about
definitely like getting mom and dad just talking about how like we're going to be changing just a little bit of what we have at the house, mainly like less sugared stuff, and like not having definitely the like Kool-Aid, not drinking that. Like Crystal Light was then the new thing, which I thought was great. Like I really liked all the different
we all love
Light
Crystal Light. It's like tradition now.
It was and it was just like, here's this easy thing that like it tastes basically the same to me, and
right.
And then I do remember. Oh, do you remember those like bottles that then had like the twist top that had faces on them?
Oh yeah. They were like barrel juices.
Yes.
I always thought they were disgusting. I think that was before I was even diagnosed. I thought they were gross. I don't think I really drank those, but maybe I did.
They were not great, but I think maybe I don't know. Because we would have them sometimes, and I remember like a year after you had been diagnosed, and like I hadn't had any sugar drink really at all. And I was over at our cousin's house, and they had one of those, and I tried it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is it was like so overpoweringly sweet.
Yeah.
And I was like, I couldn't I was just like, how do people drink this? And,
yeah.
like,
I do remember like Squeezits were a big thing. Do you remember Squeezits? They had like, I think that's what you were talking about. The faces on them.
The faces on it.
Yeah,
the twist,
okay.
Little
the twist tops. The Squeezits. Yeah. That's what it was.
I didn't know the name, so I had one of those then like a year later, and it was just like, oh my gosh, that's so clawingly sugary.
We did have those in our lunches. I also remember pixie sticks. We loved pixie sticks. And like using the little straws to like. So I'm guessing those were eliminated from our house.
Yeah. Oh, that's another thing that I remember very distinctly changing is before you were diagnosed, we would always eat school lunch. And then afterwards, mom and dad always then made all of us sack lunch from like basically from then on until we were in like high school or so.
Yeah, I'd kind of like not really connected that. But yeah, we did have, because I had to eat specific amounts, and school lunches were way too unpredictable.
Yeah.
So that does make sense.
And mom and dad just like, they didn't make a big deal of it. They're just like, hey, we're doing this now. And they did it for all of us. So like, it wasn't different for you.
Yeah. We got like Lunchables, the pizza Lunchables.
The pizza Lunchables. I remember, it was like whenever there'd be like a special day, or maybe dad didn't want to like make lunches or whatever it was, we'd get Lunchables.
The pizza Lunchables. I remember field trips, we would get those, but.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm trying to think like, so outside of, that was a big one, the school lunch thing. And then, I mean, at the time, like once you were back from the hospital and it seemed okay, like I do remember like learning how you did your testing. So you came back, because we did that little thing at the at the hospital, but I remember like one of the first days you were back, you showed us like how you did everything.
Mm-hmm.
So you showed us like how you did your blood test and how you gave yourself insulin, and yeah, and so that sort of was there. And I remember I remember there was a time when we were in the van. We were in the like the back seat of the van, and I think it was pretty early on after you had gotten home, and you were doing your blood test, and it like you like hit a vein or something, and it spurted all over the ceiling. And I thought it was the funniest thing I had ever seen. I sure remember
don't
laughing.
have a memory of this, but that is so funny.
I remember that stain being there for like years until we got rid of the van.
That little blue, was it a...
the little blue, like...
was it a Toyota? I don't know. I don't know cars. So.
Like, I have no idea.
Those
I'm sure Dad could tell you.
little square vans.
Mm-hmm.
The sliding doors, the little blue van. That is funny because I obviously have many memories of like when you do that and it sprays, and it's always when you're wearing like a white shirt or something. And the worst of it is when you do it and you don't know where it sprayed. Like I know that it sprayed, but I can't find where the spray is. So I'm like, well, I guess it's in my hair maybe. I don't know. Like where's the blood spray?
That's funny because like as a kid I just thought it was super funny, but like I've never thought about like having to think about where it actually went, right?
Clearly on top of the van.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I do remember like initially when I was diagnosed, the nurse Joan, I remember her name. I loved her. She was great. But I do remember her telling me, oh, most people just lick their fingers, like, because they would like get tissues, and in like immediately thinking that was disgusting. But now I just do it without thought because it's like, who has time to like get a tissue and wipe it? It's like, I don't know. I just do it.
Yeah.
I've just done it ever since, which is kind of weird and gross, but like, I don't know. I mean, when you do it all the time, I'm curious to see like how many other people do that. I do remember a couple weeks ago, Harper noticing and thinking it was so disgusting. Like, ew, why? And she recently had to get a blood test prick on her finger, and I told her to just lick it, and the horror on her face was like,
oh my gosh.
Like, why would I do that?
Oh my gosh. That's
anyway, one of those weird diabetic things, I guess.
Well, that's super interesting too, because there's so many things like that where like I've been closer to diabetics with you and like with Grandpa recently than probably a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many things that I have just never thought about, like the little things that come with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That then, you're just like, okay, well, it's been years that I've done this and I'm just used to it now. But like,
right.
I've never thought about that in my life. Like,
you're right.
So.
And it is weird because then you're like, well, I need to wash my hands. But then at that point, you're just like, well, whatever. I like wipe my face or like, all the time. What difference is it?
Yeah.
Now I'm showing my true colors.
I've brought out a dark side of you, or maybe a common side that everyone.
I just don't care that much. It's better than having like a bloody tissue around, right? Like.
Yeah.
So, do you remember one of the memories I remember with you specifically? I'm trying to think of like low memories, of course, because those usually stand out.
Yeah.
But I remember getting ready to go play out in the snow. And it's always, now as a parent, I understand like how maddening it is to get your kids ready to play in the snow, because it's like, here's these 10 million items you have to put on. You have to put on the gloves before the coat, and you have to get the boots on, and you have to like make sure everyone's zipped up, and it is like an ordeal.
Yeah.
And of course then you're sweating to death because it's so hot in these snow clothes. And so we went out and we were playing in the snow, and it was like 10 minutes we'd been playing in the snow, and I'm like sweating and I am low. And I think this is one of the earliest low memories that I have. like
Mhm.
distinctly. Do you have any memory of this, like going low when we were playing out in the snow as kids?
So I think I may. It's something where,
Vague,
w-
of course, but
yeah, we played out in the snow so much, and like I think I do have like a vague memory of coming in early one time,
mm-hmm.
but
I kind of assumed you may not remember like what was
like
happening, but
I probably didn't really connect what was happening.
yeah,
'Cause
I just remember coming in and Mom was like, "Why are you coming in?" And I was like, "I think I'm low." And then she like felt me and I was all clammy. And I don't know why I distinctly remember this time because I don't remember anything else about like what happened. I just remember we barely got to play in the snow after this like ordeal of getting ready.
Yeah.
I think we went back out because I think we probably built snowmen and stuff, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you'd remember that.
I don't specifically know. But that's those. I love those memories of like going out and just doing whatever in the snow.
Mhm.
And I very distinctly remember us always running into the bathroom and like running our hands under the like boiling water for some reason. It was always
That is
awful.
funny. I remember putting our gloves on the fence and
Oh
like
my
all
gosh,
over the
yeah.
house.
Yeah.
I mean, we grew up in Utah, so snow was prevalent.
hmm
But it's still to this day, anytime I go outside to do anything intense, like gardening or anything, I just like drop low.
Really?
Which is interesting because I was a lifeguard
Yeah.
all growing up, and I think it might have to do with the humidity.
Oh,
Honestly,
interesting.
because I didn't ever like have intense lows lifeguarding. I mean, I went low, but it wasn't like
hmm
all the time. I mean, you're sitting in the sun for hours and hours at a time. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Interesting. So the main thing I was wondering, like with you and school, what grade were you in when you were diagnosed?
third
Because you would have been
Third grade.
third.
So
Okay.
you were first grade, right?
Yeah, I would have been first. I remember a lot of times, like at school, when we'd be like going down to lunch or whatnot, I'd like see you at the office.
Oh, yeah.
Doing your blood test before lunch, because we were always pretty close, and I think our lunches often were at the
Overlapped.
same
Mhm.
time or right close to each other. So I do wonder about that whole aspect of it. Like
Mhm.
how quickly, because I know like mom would first off, when you were first diagnosed, would mom come to the school at all for
I don't remember,
like
but I do remember. So I would go to the office every day, and they had a little
Mhm.
book, and I would test my blood, and they'd write my number down, and then I'd go to lunch. This was at a point where I was doing like slow acting insulin, so I wasn't giving myself a
Okay.
shot at school. It was like, give yourself this shot, and then it will slowly act over this time within the time frame of lunch. And then I ate at the specific time, and like, so that's why I had to like eat these specific things for lunch. But that's funny that you saw me in the
Okay.
office. Man, those memories of going to the office. I always brought my friend Lainey
Mhm.
to the
Yeah.
office because they always wanted someone to be with me. But
Yeah. Yeah, I remember there would be times where we'd be like in the hall and I'd see you pass in the hall. And then things like that where you're like going with Lainey to then
Yeah.
go do your
To the
test and
office.
whatnot. So
that's so funny.
yeah.
It's weird. I mean, you were really young. So I think that's what's so interesting about it is because I have these memories because this was this intense thing that happened to me. And,
Mhm.
you know, obviously there were changes for you guys too, but it's always interesting to hear kind of these snippets of memories that you have within the time frame of this huge thing that happened to me. Because I don't think I remember anything from when I was 7. I mean, I remember first grade a little bit, like a few things here and there, but like,
Yeah, they're like
you know,
these really
yeah.
distinct
Like unless
moments,
there's
right?
something
But
really
like
distinct about these things, like memories, it's hard to remember anything. So I'm impressed that you remember the minivan is so funny that you remember that.
what I just remember laughing so hard and like
I wonder if anybody
and
else remembers this. Probably mom or dad from the blood stain, or did we ever tell them? We like to keep things secret.
I don't know that we did. Like, I mean, because I remember it being there for a long time, and that may be why I remember it. Because I would see the stain, and then just it would like it kept it like coming back in my memory.
Like, oh, that was that time.
Yeah, but
That's funny.
But yeah, and I do remember taking blood tests.
Oh yeah,
a fair amount when you would first come back. I don't remember why. I think dad and mom were maybe were worried that maybe I might also have diabetes. So I do remember taking blood tests a fair amount, like pretty soon after you were diagnosed. And then within a few months, I think mostly not. And I would get tested like once a year
like at the doctors.
At the doctors, but like that was it. And then after a couple of years, I think they stopped doing it. So
I do kind of remember that, like, their stress about testing you guys and wondering about the other kids getting it. But that's interesting. Do you remember anything else about that other than just testing?
Not particularly. I mean, I remember you helping me test. Like, I have very distinct memories of you like showing, okay, this is like where you want to hold your finger, and this is how you press it if you need to get the blood out, and this is how you like. And you were very like nice about it. You're like
bossy,
made it very easy for me.
I'll tell you how to do things.
Well, for me,
this is exactly how you do it, Marcus.
I was happy.
That's kind of how our relationship
that way,
rolls.
right? Yeah.
Only recently I found out that Marcus just like went along with me and didn't actually enjoy a lot of the things I made him play.
Not a lot of them, maybe some of them.
You're too kind. Marcus is the most chill human being. Which really is interesting that you were talking about how stressed you were and worried, and you know, like I think you kind of keep that shell of like chillness pretty well and like maintain like ease because you don't want to like stress anybody else out, but you like internalize those like stressful feelings clearly, because I never knew that you were stressed about it, you know?
Well, I mean that's the same with anyone. Like those feelings are always there inside me, and I would just like and I do that time where I was unsure of what was going on. Yeah, it was very kind of scary as a kid, right? And then one of the interesting things is like that was so scary, and then I think mom and dad and you made it like so easy. There were changes around the house. Like I mean, I very distinctly remember you eating eggs at night and sausage in the morning, and like dad do it like grilling the little sausages for you and that kind of stuff. And I was insanely picky as a kid, and so like I never wanted any of it, but but a lot of, like everyone else was eating it. I'd be like, can I have some bread? Like,
you're very picky about the way you eat your eggs. Are you still picky about that?
I mean, in general, I don't love eggs, so
you gotta like overcook them. Like they cannot be like remotely wet.
Yeah, texture is a big thing for me, and so like something about like eggs that are slightly runny, just like, ooh.
Marcus and I both have this weird texture thing that we both have worked through over time. So I was gonna ask you about. So our parents went to London recently after I was diagnosed, which I know that they there was fret and stress about going, like and canceling this trip they'd planned, but they worked it out. So Marcus and I stayed at our grandparents' house that lived around the corner from us for like a couple days or one of the weeks. I think they were gone for 2 weeks. So one of the weeks we stayed there.
Yep.
Do you remember anything about, obviously I know you remember about it. So there's like family lore about this trip. You can share that if you'd like. But do you remember any of the aspects of me being diabetic during that trip?
I do remember Grandma being very worried about it, right? She she's the most amazing woman ever. She's so wonderful, and she was very like very wanted everything to like she didn't want anything to go wrong, and
Mm-hmm.
she was like I remember her calling mom and dad or having on the phone with them, and the time change. I don't remember when it was, but because it's like long distance and the
Right.
time frame, but like they called I think most
To
days just
check.
to like check in and make sure that everything was going
Mm-hmm.
okay. I do remember that. And and then I'm trying to think outside of that. I don't remember much specifically with your diabetes. What was so with you? Was it like scary to have mom and dad then
I
gone since they had
I
sort of
honestly
been
don't
there and
remember
been
being
helping you?
scared. We stayed with I stayed with my dad's brother Joe and his family for the
That
first
was
half, and then with grandma. And the thing I remember most distinctly is every morning I slept in their kind of upstairs office where their like laundry room is. So
yeah.
I slept there on like a little couch hide-a-bed thing.
hmm
And I remember every morning she was very worried she was going to hurt me giving me my shots. So she was always so stressed. And
Oh.
she would give me these shots in my bum. And like she was so worried. So I'd have to like pull down my pants and just lay there. And I remember her talking about how just like do like I was just like, okay. And she was like so stressed about like, I mean, the needles are like what tiny
They're pretty
and
small.
thin, and
Yeah.
you like don't feel them. But like when you're giving someone a shot, you don't know that they don't feel it. So it is. I've given people shots.
Yeah.
I have given a shot before, and it is like very stressful and weird because you don't know how they're going to feel, you know.
Yeah.
But I do
Yeah.
remember that her giving me shots in my in my bottom every morning and being like, are you okay? Did that hurt you?" Like she's so sweet, like sweet,
Oh,
and
she's wonderful.
I.
The
You want to tell us about?
I I'll talk. Yeah. So during this time, I was convinced that I did not want to go to school because it was like over a 2 week period. So we were still in school,
Mm-hmm.
and our grandma and grandpa lived around the block from us. So our parents were just told our carpool to then pick us up at this other location, right? And so our carpool gets there, and grandma had prepared us and gotten us all together with our backpacks and everything. And the car pulls up, and Melissa goes out the door, and I tell grandma that I'm not going to school today, that I want to stay with her. And she is like, no, like you need to go to school, like you have to. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna stay with you. Like I want to stay with
Because
you.
grandma's amazing,
I
and who wouldn't want to
grandma's
stay home
amazing,
rather
and
than
she was
go to school?
yeah, she was the best. And I didn't like school was boring. And so it was mom and dad are on a vacation. I should have a vacation. And so anyway, so I'm convinced that I need to stay. And so she tries a couple of things to get me to go out, and I'm refusing. And then she says, um, if you don't go out right now, I'm gonna have to go and get grandpa. And she said the look on my face was like terrified, because our grandpa, he's very nice, but he's also like a very stern
He's like
person,
one of the
right?
warmest people, but like he does have this exterior that like
Yeah, his exterior
could
is
really
like a very
scare you if
steely
you
sort of
don't
thing.
know that he's warm inside.
Yeah. And so grandma like used this as her final threat, and my face like goes
Fine,
wide,
I'll
and I
go.
turn around and run. Fine. I run out to the carpool that's then been waiting there for like 5 minutes.
It's so funny. Like it's one of those stories where when you're little, I've heard this story 1,000 times, and I don't know what I actually remember because I've heard the story, right? Like from
Yeah.
their perspective and your perspective. And so I'm like, what do I actually remember? Like, because I remember you like crying and refusing, like just outright refusing, and Grandma was just stressed. I finally went out to the carpool to like tell them that you were coming, and then we just sat there till you finally came like moping out like little Marcus. But
Yeah.
that's so funny.
But yeah, Grandma was so great, and it's interesting because talking about her giving you shots because just the last year, so our grandpa Dave had some issues with his diabetes type 2, where he had been taking pills for a long
Sure.
time to keep it in check, and then those had stopped working, and so he had like gone through some pretty like extended periods of really high blood sugar, and so he was doing pretty badly there for a while, and was up in the hospital for a number of days, with them trying to figure out how to get it back in check. And so when he then came back from that, they had to have him start taking insulin shots, and he wasn't like convinced that he could do it for himself at the time. And Dad is terrified of needles. I've learned, and I'm fine with needles. I've never had an issue. So I then went over and was giving Grandpa shots, like insulin shots, for about 3 months or so, while he was like recovering and whatnot. And so that definitely like initial phase of like, I really don't know, like, is this hurting you? Like, is this okay? Like, is this fine? Like how I'm doing this, and like. And so it was a very interesting experience to then be like
in that side.
Giving shots and helping him track like his numbers and whatnot.
I didn't realize you were doing it for that long. I knew that you were helping because Dad like can't imagine like it's like his imagination of what's happening. It's really like triggering.
Yeah, it would not have worked for him, and so yeah, I was the closest person who was available. So yeah, like during my lunch break, I'd go over there and give him shots, and then in the morning, or it'd be like in the morning, and then during my lunch break. And
I do, I do remember
interesting.
Mom calling on the phone and asking me a lot of questions about shots, and you know. I think I talked to him about it and just said, you can do it, you know, like, you know.
Yeah, he eventually got there, right? Because he's doing it all himself now. But I think it was a lot of like him making, we didn't want him to be giving like too much, right? Because like with the pens and everything, it is, yeah,
you got to like, see it and do the right amount. And that is kind of intimidating and scary initially.
Yeah, especially after he was pretty out of it, like after that extended period. So
high blood sugar is not
high blood sugar, so.
Especially over extended amounts of time can be really like make you feel pretty crappy. So that's really interesting. I like that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about media play.
Yes.
I have to ask everyone about it. What do you remember?
So I remember like being there and sort of like it's a pretty vivid memory of like going in and you being very laughy and like in a way that like became clear was when you were very low, right? Like over time, that's like sort of, I understand that was your like sort of your behavior when you became low, but like this was pretty early on.
Yeah,
like how long had you been diagnosed? Like I don't know.
11.
Been like a year or two.
Just a few years.
Couple years. Anyway, so like I don't know that I like recognized it as you being low at the time. Like I don't think I did, and so yeah, I just remember you being very laughy, and then. The funny thing is I remember you, me, and Dad, and I don't remember anyone else. So I didn't remember that anyone else was there. Like in my mind, because like
it was just
whatever moment. Yeah, it was just us. Like I don't know why I have that. Like that's all I kept track of. But I remember being in line with you and Dad, and you collapsed like while we were in line to check out. I think.
Yeah. Dad had asked, maybe it was Dad had asked Matthew and Christopher maybe to take me out to the car. I don't know who he asked. He asked somebody to take me out to the car because at that point he knew I was low and not okay.
Oh, okay.
And so he had asked them to take me out to the car, and we probably had stuff out in the car. Maybe he was gonna like get me juice or something out in the car. So they had started walking me out, and I like fell into the carts, like just kind of my legs fell out, like kind of passed out into the carts.
Yeah.
And then
okay, so they must have brought you back.
well, I mean, it was like inches. Like
you...
it was. You guys were right there.
Oh, was it just like right there?
So
oh,
it was
okay.
Like
so that's
the
what it was.
checkout, and then the carts were just lined up, like in the front of the store, I guess.
Oh, okay. Now that you said that, I have like a visual of that media play right there, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right.
Media play.
Yeah. And so I remember that there was a guy in the other line because they had like 2 lines open who was diabetic.
Really?
And he came over and was helping. He like helped Dad with the juice and with the lemonade and stuff.
Wow, I have no memory of this. That's crazy.
I think from my memory, and you'll have to ask Dad because he probably remembers more clearly, is that he was...
I wonder if it was the... that's really interesting. Yeah, I don't know who that was.
From what I remember is there was like another guy in the other line who was diabetic and who like immediately knew what was going on and I think he may have brought the lemonade or something and given it to Dad to then give to you. And from what I think he was a lawyer from my
Really?
Like I think he was like he had talked to Dad, and it's funny that like that's one of the things that I remember is that this random other guy in another line was a lawyer and also had diabetes, and then came and was helping.
I wonder if this is all just like fantasy, like what you're remembering.
I know, I don't know.
Hilarious.
Yeah, and I don't know. Like
we may never know.
It's weird that like that's what's there in my mind, but like. I don't know.
That's why I love asking all of you about this because everybody has very distinct memories, and it's not like we can really figure out what really happened, right? I mean, obviously, Dad was the oldest and the most like coherent, you know, because he's an adult. But like also over 25 years, like everybody forgets stuff. Like everything becomes less clear. And I wonder if he journaled this. He might have journaled this. I'm gonna have to ask him. he does keep like journals better than probably any of us, but it will be interesting. So that's funny. Anyway, what else do you remember?
So I remember that. I remember the lemonade. And I remember the ambulance coming. I don't remember. Did you leave in the ambulance or did you not?
Yeah, they took me in the ambulance. Okay.
So where I remember did Dad go with you? How did that happen? Because I don't remember. Because I remember that moment in media play, and I remember like immediately after them like trying to get you to like get some sugar in you and all that, and then I remember the EMTs coming. But then I don't remember like how I got home. I don't know where Dad was.
You know what? I know Dad came with me, so somebody must have come to get you guys.
So he must have obviously called somebody.
Or you know what? I bet you guys just followed us and then someone met us at the hospital maybe to get you guys. Because I don't know. I don't remember if Dad was in the ambulance or not. I don't think.
It could have been that he was just following.
Yeah.
Like going to the same hospital or whatever.
So yeah, I'm not sure. And now that we're talking about this, I'm trying to remember if I'm combining 2 stories because I'm pretty sure that this is the time that I missed my swim meet, but now I'm thinking that might have been a separate low.
Because for some reason, I wasn't sure that you actually left in the ambulance, but I
now we need to ask because I'm pretty sure they are required at that point. I know that sometimes you can like deny being taken by the ambulance, but I don't know as a child, and Mom and Dad were probably, nervous about just taking me straight home. But
like if I don't think they would have ever been like, "Hey, don't take her." If the EMTs were like, "Hey, we should take her to the hospital."
Yeah,
Like,
because
I don't think they definitely would
now
have
I'm
just
trying
let them. I just don't
wonder
remember if you were
this
like
is the same
yeah.
time that my vein exploded from them poking my arm so many times they couldn't find a vein. I think it might have been
that
two separate
sounds
times now that
bad.
we're talking about this, but I'll have to
Hmm.
clarify with Dad. But that's interesting
Yeah.
because you only remember like some of those in between parts, like how you got home, like you don't remember, I guess. I don't even remember.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. Like, because do you remember actually being at the hospital
Well,
with that one?
I
or,
remember
like-
being at the hospital from what I'm thinking, but now I'm wondering if it was two different events. But I'm pretty sure I didn't have very many low hospital things. Like I think maybe once or twice, and I can't remember if these are the same ones. Wow, that's crazy. Even I'm not sure.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure. I think you did end up going in the.
Yeah,
ambulance, but
I think I think I
obviously-
did for sure. I just don't know if I'm remembering the correct time.
Mhm.
Of
Yeah.
which ambulance time it was.
Yeah, like other stuff around it, right? Like,
Yeah, I don't know.
which I mean, it's kind of like scary thinking about it.
Mhm.
Like that. I mean, I've never needed an ambulance, luckily.
Yeah.
But that this disease, because like you were diagnosed, and then it was sort of just in the background for me,
Mhm.
because like yeah, you took shots and you had to eat a certain way, right? But like outside of that, and mom asking you if you're low when you guys would get in fights.
Oh
like,
my gosh. Are you
I-
high? You must
I-
be low.
Are you high? Are you low? Like-
That was because through those teenage years, I mean, the emotions. But I did have certain triggers, like being high. I was very like flippant and like grumpy and grouchy in this certain way that mom is very good at picking up on like emotions and what we're feeling and like why.
yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
Do you remember anything about Halloween after I was diabetic?
I remember the toys, of course. Like mom and dad deciding that because you couldn't have candy, that they wanted to give out something that was cool that wasn't candy. So I do remember like all the awesome toys that they would get. I remember mom would get those booklets, and we would go through and like help her
Which
choose
things to
which toys
order.
we wanted to
Yep.
get. Yeah. And like we still have boxes of those. I went through a couple of years ago and like
do?
found
Oh
a
my
box
gosh.
that had a bunch of those old toys, and I was like, oh my, it brought back so many memories.
Yeah, those kind of trinket
us
Halloween.
getting
This is like
those,
before you
and-
could like go
yeah.
to Target and buy all those little things, and so everybody gave
Yeah.
out candy. Like this is the 90s, and our neighborhood
Yeah.
was insane at Halloween. I mean,
There were so
hundreds
many kids.
and
Like,
hundreds of kids. We would get so many kids, and our house became this house because they give out toys, and they were always like, they weren't just crap
No.
toys. They were like toys that were like really interesting or fun or
yeah. They're all like Halloween
Mhm.
themed and stuff, and yeah, it was from these like mail order catalogs, because it's the only
Right.
way you could get anything like that. And
yeah.
so,
And then we would have these
um,
trade-ins. Do you remember the trade-ins with Halloween candy? Because I still went trick or treating, and I could still eat candy, but not obviously on a scale of.
I don't remember
So
that.
mom
Was that like
would buy a bunch of like things that I would like, fingernail polish or toys or books and things, and let me trade in my Halloween candy. And so of course you guys all wanted to, and like Beanie Babies, because Beanie Babies were like the thing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so we would have these. Mom would let us trade in our candy for books or toys or some of the trinket toys from Halloween. I'm trying to remember all the other things. So
Oh.
I know, obviously, we didn't trade in all our candy. I obviously had to specifically like plan when I was eating the candy and stuff, but
Mhm.
that's funny.
That's the definitely that's such a funny thing too that I hadn't really thought about in a long time, of the reasoning, because I saw those toys a couple of years ago, and I don't think I immediately then thought of
Connected it.
like your diabetes being the thing that sort of triggered that all
Mhm.
off. That we gave out toys on Halloween instead of candy.
Yeah, that's so funny.
But that's so fun though. Like, oh man.
So I kind of talked to Christopher a little bit about how, because obviously growing up like alongside of me being diabetic was this, you kind of saw it day to day, and now we're adults and we obviously talk and communicate a lot. But how is like your relationship to my diabetes altered and changed over time as we're adults, and coming to a better understanding of what it is
Mhm.
and sort of the dangers and also the like normalcy of it,
Yeah. I think the funny thing is, for me at least, it's always been a very normal thing. Because,
Mhm.
like, basically my whole life that I have a memory
Mhm.
of, you've had diabetes.
Right.
So, like, it's never been something that, like, was strange to
Mhm.
me. There were people who had diabetes, and, like, I knew some in school, and I obviously knew you,
Sure.
and, like, so the shots and all of that was always just sort of like, okay, sure. And then, like, I think as I've gotten older, like, seeing the complications that can
Mhm.
happen, right, has been like a scarier
Mhm.
thing, right? Because it's like, and realizing that, like, how well you've taken care of your diabetes over the
Mhm.
years, and like how well you've taken care of yourself over the years to like make sure that it's not a bigger issue.
Sure.
Because, like, I don't think I've come to realize like how much effort and work you put in to do
Sure.
that, right? And like how difficult it is, because there are a lot of people who I've talked to and known who haven't done it as
Mhm.
well, right? And who have a lot more issues with it over the
Right.
years. So, I think that's a big thing that I've come to realize how much effort it is, and like how like how much work you need to put
Mhm.
in, um to make sure it's all
Yeah.
right. And then even with all that, like, there are times where, like, where it can, like, be a pretty big issue with, like, I know with you when you were pregnant with, it was with
Mhm.
Harper, right? Or was it with
Yeah, it's
Henry?
Harper.
Yeah. Like that whole event that you talked with Steve
Mhm.
about, and um it's obviously super scary. Like, that was when I first came back to live with mom and
Mhm.
dad, when I started going to the university here, the University of Utah, and I I think that was around when it happened.
Yeah, it
Like,
was
what year was it?
2016. Well, yeah, 2016.
Uh,
Early, like March.
okay. Yeah,
So,
so I would have been, like, I had just moved
yeah.
back.
Yeah, so you were
And
you
so,
were
like, I
home.
was here with mom and dad when it
Yeah,
happened.
what do you remember
And so,
from
yeah, like,
that?
just, so I remember them telling me that, like, Steve couldn't find
Mhm.
you. I think. Like, and I'm not sure, like, I'm trying to remember the whole timeline, because it was always obviously like he'd found you within a couple of hours,
Sure.
but I think I think he may have called them and talked to
Mhm.
them, like, earlier in the day when he didn't know
Yeah, it
and was
was
looking
like
for
not.
you, and like trying to figure out what to
Mhm.
do,
Yeah.
right? And so I think I talked to them when that happened, and it was obviously
Mhm.
terrifying, right? Like, being super worried about like where you
Sure.
were, and then obviously a huge relief once, um we knew that you were all
Right.
right. But I do remember that time frame when, like, because, like, with Steve trying to figure out like what
Yeah.
to do,
Yeah.
and
I mean, he called mom and
being,
dad like initially after he had been trying to call me and he couldn't get a hold of me, and so he called them and then called the police, and then I mean, I think it was all within 3 or 4 hours, like between
yeah.
9 and midnight or something like
Hmm.
that. So,
Yeah, so I and so, yeah, I had obviously heard from
mhm.
them after he had called, and then eventually you were found and whatnot, and so like that, I think that really, because it had been, we grew up with it, and you were obviously mostly fine, like mostly no different than anyone else. Like, yeah, you took shots and whatnot, but that was the biggest difference for me, like growing up, right?
But like you said, it was like normal, like to you, so it didn't seem weird.
Yeah,
because it was just normal to you, which is really fascinating to think about. You know, growing up with something that just seems normal, right? Like, and
yeah, like it's funny. I remember the Gatorade bottles full of needles, like from your diabetic needles on top of the fridge and stuff, and yeah, just like you pulling out your blood tester to test it at dinner time or whatever it was, and like, it was just sort of like how it went. Like there wasn't
it,
and so I think that moment then when you had this sort of this event happen really then was it like woke me up to how serious it is, right? Because unlike how rough things can get.
Yeah, it is kind of for me too, because I go every day kind of, you know, just living normally, I guess you would say, with it. And then moments like that really do kind of shake you into this like reality check of, wow, like look at how fast something like this can happen, you know? And it doesn't happen often. I guess depending on who you are and what your like situation is, because obviously everybody's access is different, and you know, people are rationing insulin, and people are, you know, not being able to afford certain things, and so there's all sorts of like variations of risk involved with diabetes, obviously. But I don't know. It's been interesting to talk to you about like a lot of things that I haven't remembered. So, and you were younger than me, so that's really, this is what I love about talking with you guys, and you know, opening up about things that maybe neither of us remembered until we're talking about it. I'm like calling to question my own memories. Like, wait a minute.
I know. I'm like, wait.
I thought I knew media play, but now I'm like, am I remembering this totally wrong? We're gonna have to like take notes and compare all the stories and come up with a timeline, because
media play. There's a lot of memories at that store for some reason for me.
Well, it was a staple, right? We would love to go there.
I know. Do you remember going and getting the 4th Harry Potter book at midnight at Media Play? And it was like a madhouse. It was insane.
Oh, Harry Potter.
Oh my gosh.
Harry Potter.
And it's funny too. I distinctly remember you talked with Christopher about listening to Harry Potter on the way to Diabetic camp.
Do you remember that?
And I remember.
Do you remember reading without us?
I do remember listening on the way home. I think they told us that I don't remember if they told us we couldn't tell you.
It was probably, I think it was just
that we would just
chapter,
go back. I think
maybe you did go back, but not quite far enough, because I only missed that one little part, I feel like.
Yeah, I think we were like begging them to continue playing it.
And they probably wanted to hear it too.
Okay, but we'll have to go back.
Well, no, but we didn't play it at that point. Mom and Dad were reading it to us. It wasn't audible. It was Mom and Dad reading in the car. It was like,
so eventually we
because we didn't audiobook them until after we'd read them all.
Yeah, that's true.
Because Mom and Dad read them all to us. I don't know when the audiobooks were put out, but we read. Mom and Dad read them to us all the way through the ending.
Yeah,
we kind of read a little bit on our own.
Once it got to 6 and 7,
because we were like in high school and stuff, but I think we still read
Yeah.
parts together. I think we read it all together, but they're like, you can read on your own if you want, but we're reading together. So we would read ahead, but then read together as well. But anyway, now we're delving into Harry Potter.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Oh, one thing I was
yeah.
going to ask you, like, are there times where you, like, as a kid or even later, just like forget that it's a thing, or is it always there? Because like I have asthma,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, and it's the type of thing where I would just like as a kid, I remember I would go and run the mile, and I would be in
Right.
agony. Like it was just horrible, and I wouldn't even think about the fact that I had asthma or that this asthma maybe is
You're like, why
causing
can't I
this
breathe?
issue for me. Like, why is it so easy for everyone else? Like, I don't know if are there things like over time that you've realized about diabetes that it's causing in you, or is it sort of always the uh like it's just always there
Yeah,
for
I
you?
mean, that is really interesting. I don't forget. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that is really interesting though, because there are points where it's like, oh crap, I didn't give myself insulin and I've like eaten already. So there is that amount of like spaciness, that happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that you forgot that you had asthma. But
Yeah, it
that
was the
is,
thing
I
where I
mean,
just like I knew I
there is a
had
certain
asthma
amount of
because I
like
was told that, but
forgetting in certain like time frames, like especially when I'm like going low, I'm like, oh, why do I feel so crappy? Why am I so like angry? Where I like don't initially think to relate it to that. So I'm like, oh,
mm-hmm.
I'm like so angry and frustrated and I'm annoyed. And then I'll like do my blood test and be like, oh, well, duh. Or like look at my pump and
Oh,
I'm
well,
like,
yeah, that
oh,
makes
well,
sense.
okay, I'm really high. Like, of course I feel like crap. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, it is.
And has that like changed over time, right? Like you have you like come to notice that more
Um,
or in yourself, or is it sort of just
yeah, I mean, I feel like
um
I don't know. That's kind of interesting to think about because I feel like,
it is such like a slow
yeah, I
change?
mean, I feel like it's just normal. Like doing my blood test, like it's almost like second nature. Like I'll just be doing my
Mm-hmm.
blood test. I'm like, why am I even testing? Like I have my sensor on. You know what I mean? Like those weird things that you just
Mm-hmm.
are habit. Um,
Yeah.
but there are times when I sort of, I don't know, not really forget, but you try and maybe block out trying
Yeah.
to think about it. Maybe subconsciously,
Yeah.
but that's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, because I mean, it is the type of thing that it is always there,
mhm.
right?
Sure.
And like it's something you always have to keep track
Mhm.
of and be
Yeah, and
aware
there's so
of,
much
like
data
a lot of other
involved, especially
diseases.
with a pump. I think that maybe happened more before I had a pump because I didn't have something constantly
Mm,
attached to me. Because that you
yeah.
can't really forget that, like when it's on you 24/7 and
Yeah.
beeping all the time, and so I think before
Mm-hmm.
I had an insulin pump, it was definitely more uh easy to kind of, you know, feel a little bit less connected to it. But thanks for talking with me and being here and
Mm-hmm.
remembering crazy stories and events with me.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on our 10th episode.
This is 10.
Woohoo! That's
This is a big
crazy
deal.
to think about.
Yeah.
Shout out to Emily who shared a bunch of our posts and was like, look at all the content you made. And I hadn't really realized like 10 episodes is a lot.
Yeah.
So thanks for
It's
being
a
with
big deal.
us. Even if you've just listened to some episodes, we appreciate you being here and listening to us blabber about life and diabetes and bread. So
Yeah, and it's we're only 10 episodes in, but we're already 10 episodes in. And it is really fulfilling for us on this side. And the small handful of folks that we have had conversations with who are on the other side listening and getting something from it has been a really important thing. And so we really appreciate it. Go head over to Diabreadic.com. Again, we have a new website. So go head over there. You can listen to all new and past episodes of the show. Check out the blog and keep an eye on all the new content coming forward. So like and subscribe wherever it is that you are listening, and leave us a review if you are there. And we will see you next time.